Welcome to Brandon Hall Group's HCMx Radio, the only podcast in the HCM arena that weaves current market research, HR technology, and industry leaders into each episode. Our HCMx Radio host is our Chief Operating Officer and Principal HCM Analyst, Rachel Cook.
Hi, I'm Rachel Cook, the CEO of Brandon Hall Group and the host of our HCMx Radio podcast. Thank you for joining us today. I'd like to warmly welcome our guest. We have with us Rohan Bhosle from Harbinger Group. He is an Associate Director of Sales Development. Welcome, Rohan.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Pleasure being here today.
It's great. I'm really excited for our topic that we're going to be talking about around content modernization and some of the work that you have going on and getting your perspectives on this very important topic. Also joining me today, we have David Wentworth, our Principal Learning Analyst from Brandon Hall Group. Hi, David. How are you?
I'm very well, Rachel. Hey, and hey, Rohan. Good to see you.
Pleasure connecting with you, David.
And especially around this topic, I know we've been doing some work around some research and developing an ebook with you. So it will be, I think it'll be great to share some of the insights and points that we have from the study. Before we get started, Rohan, can you share a little bit about your background and some of, about your learning career and journey and what drives you or why you're so passionate about the work that you do?
Absolutely. So I've been part of the learning consulting and technology services industry for just about 7 years now. And I've been supporting a host of global organizations, in implementing their learning and training development strategies. What gets me hooked on, and especially, what gets me excited is basically I'm a millennial myself, and it's always good to learn on how the younger generation of learners or learning audience is kind of coping up, or different trends that are being observed, as well as how they are consuming content. So that's always been a kind of hot topic for me, because that's usually it's kind of evolving every day, and it's really good to know different ways in which the whole transitioning is happening. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
Nice. And now the millennials are not necessarily the newer generation. So you're kind of now witnessing what we had to witness about 10 years ago.
Absolutely. In fact, now even Gen Z, absolutely. Gen Zs are entering the workforce now, and we also have the next generation, which we're calling it as Gen Alphas, born after 2010. So it's going to be a different ballgame altogether after 10 years when we meet again and speak about this topic.
Yes, it's the technology piece that really drives the nuances and kind of pushes the disruption. And so what we get accustomed to doing as we're growing up, we bring it into the workplace. So the workplace is not always ready necessarily for a lot of this new thinking and technology. So I think that's kind of what disrupts the different generations and trying to bridge everyone together, but it's no different. Every generation has a different mindset. If you go back 50 years ago, 100 years ago, but I think in the workplace, it's on the organization to kind of figure out, the best way to get everyone to collaborate and to perform and to engage. And so let's talk a little bit about content modernization and what is that? What exactly is it, and what does that entail?
So content modernization as a whole is a pretty vast ocean itself, but to put it in simple terms, basically it refers to extending the life of investments you've already made in content. And how do we extend the life of the content, you may ask? So it's simply by keeping your content current, relevant, and fresh, as well as aligning it to evolving pedagogies and technologies. So we get a lot of these requests for modernization, which mainly fall in around like 4 to 5 buckets. First one being, converting classroom trainings to virtual classrooms or self-paced e-learning modules. And this got accelerated very much due to the pandemic, which, when many training organizations had no options but to go online overnight. So we had, our customers, prospects, taking the same presentation decks that they were using in a classroom setup, going on, onto online virtual delivery platforms and just, sharing the screen, and they thought it's good to go. But over time, they realized, it's not being effective because there's so many activities that are only kind of suited for an in-person type of classroom settings, and that need to be tweaked to, kind of work best or differently in a virtual environment altogether. So that tweak was essential. That's again one part of modernization. We saw that instructionally as well, a lot of content need to be tweaked. Uh, you know, Getting out all the best features of a particular delivery platform was key. Something like using breakout rooms or polls, and even training the trainers on how to use these functionalities was one, I would say, one portion of it. So that's one, I would say, one bucket in which we saw a lot of recent modernization initiatives being started. Then we definitely have the tech upgrades, which includes migrating content from one authoring tool to another, or from one learning management system or learning content management system to another. Flash to HTML5 conversion is a great example of, a tech upgrade we saw in the recent past when Flash said goodbye to us.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would say there are a couple of more. So we've seen a lot of requests coming in for converting long courses to, micro learning nuggets these days. So there's definitely a strong push here, and the reason behind it was making learning available in the flow of work and at the time of need, or just-in-time learning, whatever we may call that as. So apart from this, other factor to drive the adoption of micro learning would be changing learner preferences altogether. So the ways the learners have evolved completely has kind of changed. So there's a strong push, and with so many distractions, the attention spans have reduced a lot these days, as we know, especially with as we were speaking, with the younger generations, and plus working from home has its different set of challenges altogether. So that's one other modernization kind of bucket that we had. And then we also saw a lot of demand for implementing kind of a new look and feel, or putting it in simple words, maybe a facelift to the existing content, which is more from a design and user experience perspective.
So
and
a lot of changes in you pointed out a lot of changes in the learning ecosystem that professionals really had to kind of wrap their heads around, and it's exciting, and especially bringing learning to the work, the flow of work. And so converting a long program into something more micro or nuggets, bite size, brings challenges, I'm sure, for the learning professional to figure out what to cut, what to add, what to change, but the effectiveness of it is so much greater, and the benefits are so much greater, because taking something that you would learn in 1 day or 2 days and breaking it up where someone can apply it over a series of weeks or months, or or just ongoing in their learning journey, that will in return have a greater impact. David, is there anything else that you're seeing from our research that you'd like to mention?
Yeah, I mean, everything that we're seeing follows right along with what Rohan's seeing from the inquiries that Harbinger has been getting, in that there's sort of two things happening here. One is the idea of content modernization is such an important thing for companies to start to think about, because one of the things that keeps a lot of them moving forward from an L&D perspective, whenever we talk about sort of next gen technologies and experiences, and they look and they see all the content that they currently have, they say, well, we can't do anything with it because we have all of this existing content we've already invested all this money in. And in a lot of companies' heads, it's a start from scratch perspective. Like they think they have to just throw everything away, all that investment, and start over, which that's clearly not the case. You can take the good, solid principles that exist in that content and reimagine it in new ways. And so there's that. And then, you know, some of the things that Rohan, you had mentioned, the death of Flash, that, you know, didn't necessarily sneak up on anybody. I mean, we had plenty of time to hear about it, but at the same time, it took a lot of people wait to the last possible moment to make that transition. And then you have something like the pandemic, and those two occurrences just highlight that there probably should be some sort of modernization strategy in place to handle when the next thing happens, because there will always be a next thing. There'll always be some reason why we need to keep moving forward. And if we just don't have the thought process, the strategy in place to do that, everyone becomes immobile.
That's a really good point, David. And Rohan, you know, as David mentioned, you know, you don't have to necessarily start from scratch. You know, what are some of the other learning interventions that an organization can leverage when transforming that content?
So there are definitely so many learning interventions, you know, which could be considered as part of the whole modernization initiative. So one could be, as we spoke about, micro learning. That's for sure. You know, with a strong push towards delivering bite-sized information and not overwhelming the learners with, you know, the longer 1 hour, 2 hour long modules. Also, how you deliver these micro modules would be one of the key aspects. So you could use something like, you know, a nudge learning platform, which can help you deliver these micro learning nudges to your learners in the flow of work itself. And these platforms could be easily integrated with, you know, existing communication tools, like it could be either Outlook, Teams, Slack, or any other tool that you're using in an organization. Apart from that, yeah, so that's one that quickly comes on top of my mind. And another way in which you could deliver content to your learners could be through an AI-driven chatbot. So that's again a new kind of modality in which we're seeing learners consuming content. And this could be as simple as chatting with the bot and, you know, telling which particular learning topics you're interested to go through. And then at the back end, you can link various learning sources to the chatbot from where it could pull content, you know, and present it to your learners. So, for example, you can have a chatbot integrated with your LMS. It could pull in content from your LMS or any skilling platforms that you've subscribed to, or even like as simple as YouTube videos. You know, it can pull in content there. So these are some of the new learning interventions or learning delivery mechanisms that you know may help the learners. And apart from that, definitely we have other ways like using gamification in learning, or game-based learning itself is a good you know modality or intervention which can keep your learners engaged and also make it a little fun for them. And then we've seen a lot of requests also. We've seen you know I would say a surge in at least you know informational requests coming in for augmented reality and virtual reality these days. So that could be few of the other interventions. Then we have animated videos, interactive videos, interactive PDFs or ebooks, and again the list goes on. So just wanted to highlight. Yes.
That's great. Well, what about templatization and automation? You mentioned the bots, and you mentioned a little bit about automation, but what else? You know, how can templatization especially be helpful?
So both automation and templatization play a very important role to especially handle, you know, large volumes of content. And when we're talking about modernization, we won't look at just, you know, modernizing one or two, you know, programs that you have in your whole bunch of, you know, plethora of your existing content. So When it comes to volume, this plays a really crucial role. So the sooner we identify what role can automation play in one's modernization journey, the more rapid and cost-effective would be the whole process. So at Harbinger, we've built custom utility tools which help us extract content from legacy courses and then repurpose them into newer formats. And this is even possible if you don't have the source files available. And another way, again, to achieve the whole scalability in your modernization journey is going ahead with a template-driven approach. So in a typical e-learning development process, we start off with storyboarding and then move to the actual development. Again, nothing is wrong in that approach, but just imagine we're talking about hundreds of hours of learning material. So that might not be, the best option to go for. And that's where we flipped this approach for modernization, where we first analyze legacy content, and based on the results, we create a template library which acts as a guiding factor throughout the entire production process. That's why instructional designers, propose replacing screens within a legacy course based on the new templates that we've developed. And once we have the templates ready and identified for each screen, then automation again comes into play to populate the extracted content back into these templates.
Okay. So that helps with scalability of it, and and also I like what you mentioned, to take a look at those courses, then are the legacy courses that are that have more impact or that are more effective, and start with those. That way you're not wasting time on trying to convert everything, because I don't think that's manageable, or necessarily that critical for some programs to be converted.
Yeah, Rachel and Rohan, and this is actually something we touch on in the ebook, but this idea of scalability and the ability to do this relatively quickly, and obviously at a large enough scale is very important, because outside, like in our one of our learning strategy surveys, we asked the question, which learning priorities, like how important are these learning priorities for achieving business goals, right? So the question was asked completely divorced from the idea of content modernization. That wasn't even part of the conversation. It was just, what are the big priorities that learning needs to do in order to achieve business goals, right? So these are obviously the critical things. And in the top 5 or so of these priorities, one of the top ones was increasing microlearning. The next was revisiting existing content for new modalities. We saw redesigning the classroom experience, and then we even saw creating smaller content objects, which goes into what Rohan was talking about, learning the flow of work, more microlearning. And if you look at all of those, all of those are about modernizing content, right? Then being able to increase microlearning. So finding existing traditional content and being able to break it up into smaller pieces. Using what you have for even newer modalities as they become available, or you have new delivery platforms. And I think another big one, especially now, is this redesigning of the classroom experience, because up until the pandemic was in full swing, ILT was the #1 way that companies deliver training across the board. It's been that way for as long as we've been measuring it. And suddenly that was unavailable. Now, I know there's definitely an appetite for a return to the classroom when possible, and I think that's great. I think the classroom training, face-to-face, in-person, plays a huge role in learning. But I think as organizations come back to start doing that, and they have a more hybrid workforce, and they've been doing a lot more with digital and virtual tools, they're going to rethink what the classroom experience really is, and they need to relook at that content, what they use, and how they do it. And so even that content, which may be still taking place in an in-person classroom, needs to be modernized, because the classroom experience is becoming modernized as well.
And you're also taking into the classroom technology. So even if you're in a classroom with an instructor, that instructor is probably leveraging some of the microlearning, some of the videos, some of the gamification, and so forth. Right. To make it more engaging, more interesting, and you don't just want to listen to one person for 8 hours a day, no matter how great he or she is or are. It's just not enough. It has to be more blended and more engaging. So as we bring back the classroom, the classroom's definitely going to be different. Rohan, what recommendations would Harbinger give to an organization who is thinking about modernization? You know, everyone's kind of at a different stage of where they are. Some are more mature, but there are a lot of organizations that are still trying to figure out, you know, how to go about this.
Definitely. So modernizing content is definitely inevitable, so there's no running away from it. There will come a time when you will be forced to do it, and that will be sooner rather than later. And at the speed in which the whole learning ecosystem is changing is exceptional. As in, we haven't seen that push since a long time. So the best option is to have like a structured way in which you can carry out the whole modernization journey. And for that, we've got our own content modernization framework known as the XSmart framework, which is a solution accelerator designed for teams to successfully implement and execute their content modernization strategy. So this framework includes the X factor, which is the first layer. Basically, it stands for the automations, automation piece we spoke about. And then we have the second layer of the framework, which talks about various other aspects you should consider as part of your modernization strategy. So starting off with making your content searchable. So we spoke about how learning needs needs to be available in the flow of work. And a key aspect to make this happen is to ensure that your content is easily searchable. It could be achieved in two simple steps. So first is instructionally identifying your key learning objectives, and then metadata tagging of content with relevant keywords. So that's one aspect to think about. Microlearning, again, we've spoken a lot about microlearning, and even the stats that David shared. That's top on the priority list for many learning organizations. So that's one. Then we also have the accessibility, thing to think about. So again, making content available even for the differently abled audience by implementing something like Section 508 or VCAC 2.0, 2.1, or any other geography specific accessibility standard. So that is also something you need to think about while modernizing your content. And if you kind of think about this at an early stage in your modernization process, it'll be a lot easier to implement, because we can implement it at a template level, and we don't have to really go and do it manually for each and every screen. So that's one advantage of thinking about accessibility standards at the early stage. And definitely then we have responsive. We need to, if you don't have your current existing content into responsive, HTML5 type outputs, we need to do that so that your learners can consume content on the go. And the last piece being, the trackability aspect. So SCORM has been around for many years, and it is definitely here to stay, but there's only so much insight that a SCORM package can bring. So stakeholders are looking at more flexibility and deeper analytics on learner behavior, performance, to ensure they're moving towards achieving their goals for achieving a certain competency level. And this is again a good time to think about the trackability aspect. So again, so having like a structured approach.
Not much to think about, right?
Yep. Absolutely. There's so much, and it becomes overwhelming for the stakeholders as well. Should we implement everything in one go, or should we just start with one? Again, there's no right or wrong. It completely depends on your priorities. But these are some few points that we can consider.
Absolutely. And what we find too, and David, you can probably also agree, is that, when companies are kind of at the very, very beginning and they do get overwhelmed, at least starting with a pilot program and testing it and getting feedback. And then, oftentimes too, using that feedback to adjust and to make it better. They find it rewarding and usually a good starting point. The framework that you have is very helpful. I think also our ebook will be very useful in just kind of thinking through some of these big concepts and how to kind of construct them or break it down into just, a step-by-step approach to tackling this. Just like any other learning effort, it is achievable. You just have to kind of think through it and, not try to overthink it either, just kind of, making sure you're partnering with someone also that can help you, that your culture matches and that that you can, have a really good partnership, because that'll, you have a lot of great clients that you're working with, and that shows, the work that you're doing and, and the impact that you're having. David, is there anything else?
No, I would just agree with your point about sort of pilot programs. Not only is it helpful in the iterative process, so you can see what works and apply it in the as you scale up, but this also makes for good success cases. A lot of times organizations have trouble with these kinds of initiatives with the rest of the business to say, why should we be doing this? Can I do this? Can we move forward? You're able to show with these pilot programs, when you do have success, say, look, I can demonstrate why this works. And then you'll get more executive or stakeholder buy-in, and allows you to move forward.
Absolutely. And, being able to build that business case and show those success stories are very important especially to get buy-in and to get budget and resources to move forward. So, well, this is a wrap. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rohan. Any lasting thoughts or considerations?
Again, I would say, yeah, it's a good time to start your whole, start at least thinking about the whole modernization journey, or start, putting bits and pieces together. This is a really good time, because again, we're going to see some more strong push in the coming few months and the years to come with the different learning ecosystems that are coming into picture. So I would say, yeah, good time to start thinking and then implementing about the whole modernization initiatives.
Mm-hmm. And there are it might seem very challenging at first if you're just starting, but there are a lot of resources like Harbinger has that helps the process, and content or creating the content is not as arduous as it had been, years past. So there's a lot of templates to use. There's a lot of off-the-shelf content that you can take a look at. So, our advice is just to get started and to, and also try to have some fun with it, because, in the long run, it can be a very fun way of delivering training and an effective way of doing so. But if you, and our ebook is also available that we'll include in our blog, or if you'd like to reach out to us, either at research@brandonhall.com or success@brandonhall.com, we're happy to also share with you this ebook. So again, thank you, Rohan and David, for joining me, and to our listeners that are signing on and joining us as well. I wish you all a great, productive week and year ahead. And until next time, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Rohan.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Thanks, David.